Hey guys, I'm Randy Romero with the lovely law firm. You are watching the Carolina Justice Report. I'm here with attorneys Sarah Austin and Amy Lawrence, and we are doing a deep dive back into the Murdaugh murders. So welcome back to the Carolina Justice Report. You know, ladies, last time we talked, we did kind of an overview of beginning to end of what has been happening with the Murdaugh murders, which has been a huge deal here because it happened in South Carolina, so everybody's following it. I think we left off with kind of Alec Murdaugh, faking, or trying to stage a death so that his son could get his life insurance policy and him going to rehab. So what has kind of happened since then?
Oh, it's so much. What has happened? What hasn't happened? You know, we've seen Alec Murdaugh he's got 74 pending charges. Wow. They range from, multiple breach of trust, money laundering, criminal conspiracy, computer crimes. The list goes on and on and on. He's looking at like 731 years in prison.
Wow.
And that's just what has been brought to date.
Sure.
And more are coming. SLED in the Attorney General's office has made it clear there is more coming. This is just the tip of the iceberg, which I think is...
Yeah, and these charges they look like they all stem from the theft of money and mishandling of money and insurance funds and stuff like that. And they don't even address any of the murders or any of that kind of stuff that's going on. All those investigations are still happening.
Yeah.
Interesting. And we are doing a deep dive into the money part of where's the money with all of this. So you'll have to watch the next Carolina Justice Report to get a deep dive into that.
Yeah.
But has he been arrested or what's going on with him?
So Alec is sitting in the Richland County Jail on a $7 million bond. And he's in Richland County because he was a badge-carrying solicitor in Hampton County. And his father, grandfather, he has a dynasty of prosecutors in his family. And so for the safety of him and others, I guess, they put him in Richland County, which is where he's been housed.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so he's got all these charges. And what we're also seeing unfold is, and I think Justin Bamberg has done a wonderful job, who's an attorney. More victims are coming out of the woodwork.
Wow.
And during his bond hearing, we heard from a highway patrolman who was hurt terribly in an accident on the job, and we heard that he had stolen his money, right? And we heard from these victims, and one of the victims is a young man who was a paraplegic, and how he took that man's money. And so, this goes all the way back to the Satterfields is when we first found out about it, but like the victims just keep coming, and it breaks my heart because as lawyers, we're not allowed to have a bad apple. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't get to be a bad apple in this kind of profession.
Especially when you're representing injured people.
Right.
So these people need the money, and it's a lot of money that is missing. I think they're finding out. It really is just the tip of the iceberg, like what is missing and how long has this been happening.
And I think what breaks my heart also too is, because we deal with injured people all the time. This is what we do. And we know that before you settle a case, that time frame, the majority of the world lives paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
And when there's an accident, their whole life is thrown into, whether it's on the job or a car accident or whatever, their whole life is kind of thrown into up in the air, and it's like there's no real certainty. And they're worried because they have, a house payment to make. They're broken and hurt, and they, but that house payment keeps coming, and that car payment keeps coming, and insurance has to be paid, and we've got to feed our children, and we want to make sure our babies have somewhere to lay their head, and that is really hard. And so I think one of the things that really just makes me really angry as a lawyer is that the lawyers on the civil side of this have said, we gave some of this money back, so we're even Steven, right? We gave the money back, and that's enough. But that doesn't account for all the heartache for the last 3 years where they could have had that money. You know what I mean? So that's not enough.
So will that be another trial, do you think?
Well, I think there absolutely will be. I don't think a settlement is, there has to be some kind of punitive damage here. You stole someone's money and just giving it back 3 or 4 years later, sometimes 7 years later, is not enough.
Right.
Because that could have been, the peace of mind that they needed, or the money to get their surgery that they need, whatever it may look like. And I just don't think that's enough.
Yeah.
Just giving them the money back is not enough. There has to be some kind of penalty for it, a punitive damage, because they're held to a higher standard, and they have a fiduciary duty, and they're not exercising it.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, and you and I were kind of chatting before we started rolling, and you were saying even from rehab, he was still doing stuff, right?
Yeah, and so back to Alec, because I think the last time that we talked, it was right after he staged a suicide for hire insurance scam plot, and he hadn't been arrested yet, but his law license was suspended, which means he can't practice law, and he checked himself into rehab. And I think now we're finding out that he was calling clients from rehab to say, your case settled, come get your money, and they were going to the law firm to get it, or however that was, but he was still practicing law even though his law license was suspended. And at that time he had not been arrested or charged yet, but all this, it was known that all this money was missing. He put his law firm on notice that he took money or whatever that was.
Right.
So for him to still be settling cases even with these allegations pending and with his law license suspended is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And it's a bold move.
And his law firm had to have known that that's what he was doing, because because the paperwork's getting sent to the firm.
Yeah. So has the law firm been shut down as well, or just him?
No one from his law firm has been charged or been suspended. Matter of fact, from what I understand, they have shut down the firm and they've reopened under a new name with the Murdaugh name taken out, and they're all operating under this new firm.
But the only one that's been arrested is his best friend, Corey Fleming.
Although I will say this, there are attorneys in his firm, his old firm, PMPD, affectionately known
PMPED.
PMPED, as pimped by Justin Bamberg, making me giggle. But he's still using their signatures for the old law firm name are still in all their emails. So it just seems odd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So let's go to Corey.
Yeah.
Who is this, and how do we know about him?
Amy probably knows more about his background and connection to Alec.
So Corey Fleming is an attorney. He is Alec Murdaugh's best friend, the godfather of one of his sons. And he, in this whole scenario, in the Gloria Satterfield case, was the attorney for the estate of Gloria Satterfield.
Right.
And he has been charged with, I think it's 17 charges. He was just given a bond a couple weeks ago. I think it's a $100,000 bond.
So he's out.
So he's out.
Jail.
His license to practice law had been suspended.
In South Carolina and Georgia, I think.
Because he's barred both.
Yeah, he just, which I don't know how, I did not think that the letters to ODC were public. But
I didn't either.
Yeah, we got to read that whole complaint from Georgia, which I guess we'll get into, but...
It may be the Georgia is public. South Carolina's ODC complaints, and ODC stands for Office of Disciplinary Counsel.
Okay.
And that's who does investigations if there's a bar complaint.
Okay.
There's an issue of any kind of impropriety by an attorney.
Okay.
But
so there's a lot of those in this case. But
a lot.
I guess all of this is stemming from the Gloria Satterfield case, and when I get frustrated, especially listening to the Murdaugh Murders podcast, is people confuse the civil side of things with the criminal side of things, because Alec is a defendant. He is a defendant now, a criminal defendant. He's being charged with all of these charges and sitting in jail, but he was also the civil defendant for the Gloria Satterfield case, and that's because she died at his house, and so it was his home, his homeowner's insurance policy that paid out that $4.3 million wherever it went. And then he had Gloria Satterfield's sons hire his best friend, Corey Fleming, to represent them and her estate and their interests. And then they hired their friend, Chad Westendorf, to be the personal representative of the estate. So all three, it's just so crazy to me that, we represent people's estates when people pass away all the time, and never is the defendant who owns the house best friends with me.
Right.
And they're talking. So Alec Murdaugh had a lot of involvement as a defendant who's being sued, who's at fault for this.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I had even read
in
that
the case.
Alec had convinced the sons to use Corey Fleming at the mom's funeral.
Mm-hmm. It feels...
How insensitive. I mean, it blows my mind, all that he's done.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
It's icky.
Yeah.
It's icky.
It doesn't feel right from the start.
There's
and
like no arm's length to any of this.
Alec's firm obviously couldn't do it because Alec worked there and
Right.
they can't sue themselves. If they had to sue, this all happened pre-suit, so no one was actually sued. But if they had to sue some, it would have been Alec Murdaugh owning the property, or Maggie Murdaugh, whoever owned it. And so his firm couldn't do it, so he had to hire his buddy who worked at a different firm. He didn't have to.
Right.
but he had to go outside of his firm and he couldn't do it himself. And so it looks like he just called his right-hand man and was like, let's do this. Let's get us a bunch of money instead of let's get Gloria Satterfield's family a bunch of money. And that's what happened. So that's where all the charges are stemming from, which is kind of crazy because there's been so much going on in this case. And now there's so many charges and it all stems from just one civil incident. And now we're getting all of these criminal cases coming out of it.
And one of the things about the Gloria Satterfield case that is super disturbing is that how she died is up in the air, right? We've heard different stories come out of Alex's mouth through witnesses, how she died. Did she die because she fell down the stairs? Hell, where she died, where she fell is also in dispute. Some say Moselle, others say the other home.
Yeah, and I know SLED is investigating it now, but it's very interesting, that some accounts, and all these different accounts come from Alec Murdaugh because it happened pre-suit, so there were no depositions taken. There was no real investigation. It just seems like Corey Fleming probably wrote a couple letters to the insurance company, and they wrote him a big check, which is it's amazing that he got $4.3 million.
Right.
That is a great settlement, but where all the money went is the problem after that.
Right.
We know where it didn't
But
go.
Alec Murdaugh is sort of the only record of any kind of evidence we have is him telling one person she fell on the stairs, another person the dogs knocked her over, another person the dogs tripped her down the stairs. And so SLED, I think,
And
is
that was a
investigating
closed
her death.
case that they reopened now because of all this, right?
Right. I believe SLED now reopened it to try to investigate and figure out how she actually died.
Yeah. She ended up dying later from, I think it was a brain bleed.
Really?
Yeah.
So it wasn't an immediate thing.
No. And what's crazy is, and we heard this through the Murdaugh Murder podcast that Fitz News does. We heard those 911 calls from her death, from when she got hurt, when she fell. And we heard Maggie, and I don't know these people, but this is a woman who helped raise her children.
Right.
She had worked for them for 20 some years, and everybody just seemed very annoyed when you listen to these 911 calls, and very frustrated they're even having to deal with this.
Really?
Yeah. It was just very odd.
It didn't feel like an emergency. I found
There was no concern.
someone I care about
Right.
with the brain bleed. It was just kind of like my
Just
housekeeper
get here.
fell.
Ugh. It was just really odd. And everybody handles trauma differently, and your body's in shock when you see something like this happen. I get that.
Yeah.
But it just seems, everybody seemed very unaffected.
Yeah.
And annoyed that they had to deal with it.
Very interesting.
Because you hear Paul on that 911 call, just get here. Why are you asking me all these questions? And then you hear Maggie with the same kind of sentiment, like they're bothered to be even having to deal with this.
Yeah, it should be
So
interesting.
the whole thing with Corey just came out, mid-March.
Right.
March. So, we're kind of waiting to see what happens with him, but you're saying he's out on bond.
Yeah.
And so, do you think that other lawyers and other people are going to start getting indicted for this stuff too?
If they did something wrong, I sure hope so.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that this case has done that has been a good thing is that it has shined a light on our justice system here in South Carolina and the wrongdoings that we see in the good old boy system. They always talk about the good old boy system, and it's alive and well. And even when we think that we're progressing and getting to a better state, things like this come up and we see it. We see, judges who are not necessarily doing the right thing, that are going off grid and just doing things that just are not allowed to do, that are not, lawful. We're seeing judges do,
Well, just they're stepping away from the procedure in
Right.
such a way that it really shows how much power Alec Murdaugh and influence he had in that
Right.
community. That
That's
a
the word.
South Carolina judge, in the Satterfield settlement, it's coming out, and that's why everyone's getting in trouble, is that, and I think Chad Westendorf gave a deposition, which was really interesting to listen to, and for so many reasons, but
And Chad Westendorf was a friend of Corey Fleming and Alex Murdaugh, and he was named the PR, asked to be the personal representative of Gloria Satterfield's estate. So he had to approve, he was representing the estate in the best interest of Gloria Satterfield's children.
yeah, and so some people don't understand what personal representative means,
Right.
and so when someone dies and there's a wrongful death situation, they might already have an estate, they have money that needs to be divided up and given out to their heirs, But also you open an estate for the wrongful death settlement proceeds because you can open them before you even have a settlement. And you appoint someone, the PR, and you say, okay, you're going to be in charge of making sure that this money goes where it's supposed to go. And you're going to be the person who says, this settlement I think is a good settlement, or this settlement's a bad settlement. You sort of get to make those decisions for the estate. And so...
And usually that's a family member.
Normally it's a family member.
Right.
Sometimes, and I think in this case, the Satterfield boys were younger. And so that's kind of how they convinced them, like, oh, you're not equipped to handle this kind of thing. Let's hire somebody. Let's hire the president of a bank because this is the president of all the banks.
Trustworthy.
Because he knows finances and he'll take care of you. When really he was one of them. But what's crazy, and back to the power and influence thing, is you've got all these smart lawyers, presidents of banks in a room, and a judge. And
not in a courtroom, in a chamber.
In chambers with the judge. And when you have a wrongful death settlement like this, because we do them all the time, you've got to have the settlement amount. What are the attorney's fees going to be? What are the costs? And the judge will want to know, they want to know if you spent $1 million on an expert. The judge is going to be like, well, what was that expert? How did it work for you?
Right.
They ask you those
Medical
questions.
bills, creditors, they want to know where every penny is going. And then they look at the personal representative and they say, do you understand this? Are you happy with this? Do you
happy
want
with
me to
your
approve
attorney?
this?
Yeah.
Do you understand what you've got to do from here? You've got to give it to the heirs, and that's how it works. And it's a very standard procedure, and it's almost the same every time. And it's kind of like a science. We do them all over state.
Yeah.
You can do them on WebEx even now. They're doing it like via Zoom court. But it's the same questions that the judges ask the PR. And in this case, I don't know, the PR, Chad Westendorf, says that Judge Mullen didn't ask him any of these questions. And I don't know if he's sort of playing silly or if it goes to show that, Alec Murdaugh came into the room and said, I got this, Judge. Of course we did everything right. Just sign here. And she just felt that she could trust Alec Murdaugh and his firm. And that's just crazy because he was the one being sued in that case. So he definitely should not have been leading the charge.
Right. One of the things also that is super weird is that they removed his name from the caption. So it would be the estate of Gloria Satterfield plaintiff versus the Murdaugh family, Alec Murdaugh and Maggie Murdaugh, whoever that may be, as the defendants. And his name and Maggie's name are not on there. It just says Henry Satterfield, I think.
Yeah, they totally took them out of it when they were so involved in it, which is just... I would like to know
Unheard
what was
of.
said in that room and how that happened. Because I can't even, the judges I have the best relationships with, I cannot imagine walking to the room and being like, Judge, settlement's great, just sign here. They'd be like, are you crazy?
Yeah. Have you lost your damn mind?
You're going to explain
Get your ass out there and get it
yourself.
scheduled. Right. That's just not going to happen.
Explain yourself. Where's the personal
Right.
representative? What is this even about? They would have went into all those questions.
Man.
And so we've just got the bank guy's testimony at this point. And so it's hard to know. I don't want to go out and say that she just did everything wrong, but I think it just is really a testament to how much trust was put into this firm and into Alec Murdaugh and him and his position for so long that no one even
Questioned it.
had a second thought about doing what he said.
Yeah. So
Even a
what are we
judge.
waiting on at this point? Of course, folks, stay with us because we'll follow up on this story as it evolves. But what should we be looking for in the future as things come out? Kind of a verdict for
I think
court,
that we're
maybe?
all wondering about the murder of Maggie and Paul, right? So Alec, and I think that everybody probably knows this, but Alec's wife and son were murdered at his home at Moselle. And we're still wondering what happened.
Yeah.
What happened?
And did it
to
have
them?
anything to do with this big financial mess that they were in?
Right. We learned that Maggie had hired a forensic accountant to look at their money and their assets. We know that Paul was being sued and was facing a boating under the influence with death for the death of Mallory Beach.
And they would all be held liable for that, right? Because it was his
Right.
parents' boat. So they were all
On the
sort
hook.
of Paul was being, again, criminally charged for the boating under influence, but his family was potentially on the hook for her death civilly, so owing Mallory Beach's family a lot of money and everyone else who was injured on that boat.
Right. One of the things also that has come up recently is the court put a conservatorship into place to take over to make an accounting of all the assets of Alec Murdaugh and to stop any, he's in charge of everything, took control of everything. And one of the deals is with that is that Alec Murdaugh can't do anything with any of his assets. Everything's frozen. And after that was set in place, he did a letter, and I'm not sure exactly what it's called because we don't do a lot of probate stuff. We get probate attorneys to handle that. We know our wheelhouse. But essentially, he disinherits himself. So Maggie owned the home, Moselle, 100%. It was in her name. It was deeded in her name, which is not uncommon in marital situations, especially when one's a doctor or lawyer, in case it just insulates. And so Alec inherited the home 100%. And so he disinherited himself. So he wrote a letter saying, I disinherit myself. I don't want anything having to do with Maggie's. And in doing that, he's trying to give the money to his son, and it keeps any of the creditors from the people he stole from getting it. And so he's been called out, and he's being held, he's got a contempt charge hanging over his head as well.
Wow.
There's
Thank you both for chatting about this today.
Yeah.
Again, we are going to stay on this and update you all. And of course, you can watch our next episode, which is all about where is the money going? Where's all this money, right?
Where's the money?
You guys can follow us on any social media channel. We are on YouTube. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all over the place. And of course, you can head to justiceslovely.com as well to visit the Lovely Law Firm, and we can answer any questions that you have law-wise as well. Thanks so much for watching the Carolina Justice Report today.
When life gets ugly, justice is lovely.